Welcome to Days of Roar, a Detroit Tiger podcast brought to you by the Detroit Free Press. My name is Mark Gorash. I am with Free Press beat writer Evan Petzold. We are doing Days of Roar After Dark, which we will do many, many, many more times during the 2024 season. If you don't get the joke, we'll explain it to you another time because it's too damn late to explain it tonight. So, Ev, we have real baseball, which was exciting for both of us. I know you're kind of tired. There's things to do to get to New York tomorrow, and we're going to jump into it. So let's talk a little bit about something more important before we get started. I just wanted to send out some Days of Roar condolences to the family of John Kloss, podcaster with Motor City Metrics, intern with Bailey Sports. Unfortunately, the victim of a pretty tragic accident this week. Just wanted to make sure that we gave John a shout out, a big part of what we consider Detroit Tigers community. Great kid, love the Tigers, and want to express both of our condolences to his family before we get started tonight. So let's get to happier things. Went to Chicago for the opening series of the 2024 season, and the Tigers did something they have never done before. They went 3-0 in March. So that was fun. Let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah, 3-0 in March, 3-0 record for the first time since 2016. The vibes are pretty good right now, I'll tell you that. I mean, it's hard to be 3-0 and have the vibes not be good, but the Tigers got the job done. They did a really good job of beating a team that's projected to be one of the worst in baseball. And they did it by one-run margins, winning 1-0 on Thursday, 7-6 on Saturday, and 3-2 on Sunday. Look, the Chicago White Sox are not going to be a good team. We know that. They're going to be at the bottom of the American League, probably fighting with the Oakland Athletics for that last spot. But you know what? The Tigers did what good teams do. They come in there and they win. That's what matters. And I think that's what stands out. Now, they didn't blow them out. They didn't blow them away. But at the same time, they got the job done, and the Tigers beat a lesser opponent. And I think that matters.
So in the famous words of two longtime baseball watchers, what do good teams do to bad teams?
Take their lunch money.
That's right, baby. They beat them. So doesn't matter. Close, sloppy, clean. And although the good news was Tigers played some clean games.
It was clean. It was all clean across the board. There was no sloppy play from the Tigers here. This was clean baseball. And look, the bats maybe were a little bit cold, but the pitching picked up the slack. And then AJ Hinch, man, I mean, the way that he manages ball games, that's advantage Tigers about probably against just about everybody. It feels like the way that he's able to mix and match and maneuver, especially with the lineup being built for him to do that. I would say advantage Tigers if we're talking about the managerial battle or the managerial chess match, if you will. The Tigers did a lot of really good things.
All right, so we're going to get into that in 1 second in a big way. Just want to also touch on Sempo Brisky to Toledo. He was as surprising a demotion as Matt Manning was. I think we can make sense out of it. We're going to talk a little bit about Alex Lange near the end of the podcast tonight, maybe, and we'll talk a little bit more about Bro Brisky at that point in time. But I just thought when we're talking week in review, at least have to acknowledge how that shook out. And I think maybe we can discuss a little bit about that more in detail at the end of the pod. We're going to jump straight into the big two because it's late. It's a great week, and we want to discuss more important things. So the first question of the big two is AJ Hinch the puppet master? And how much did he embarrass Pedro Grifol all weekend, where it looked like a daddy playing chess with a 9-year-old? So talk to me about that a little bit.
It was really impressive. AJ Hinch stood out in this entire series. We talk about a lot of different guys having some big impacts, right? You can talk about Tarek Skubal coming out and leading the way with an outstanding opening day performance. How about the bullpen? Jason Foley, Shelby Miller, Andrew Chafin, plus some other guys as well mixed in there. You know, even some offensive production. You talk about Kerry Carpenter, the way that he looked. Mark Canha, I thought, looked great at the plate. You can pinpoint different guys that had really big series. But how about AJ Hinch? Did AJ Hinch not have a huge series? I think so, because the way that he was able to maneuver the Tigers in and out of games, in and out of close ones, it was outstanding. Like the way that he used the bullpen on opening day, going to Andrew Chafin and then pivoting to Jason Foley to get the last 2 outs after Andrew Chafin was able to take down a left-handed hitter, because Jason Foley struggles more against left-handed hitters. Like that was masterful first and foremost. And we know AJ Hinch is really good at maneuvering the bullpen matchups. We've seen that time and time again. I think we're going to see even more this year. We saw it a lot last year, but we're going to see even more where they're going to be trying to take advantage of these matchups on offense. And I know we saw it a lot with the pinch hitters last year. The Tigers did that a ton. But I think as this roster continues to be built, the second year under this type of style of play, these guys are really comfortable in their roles. Andy Ibáñez, who got the big hit on Sunday, it was a huge hit, 9th inning hit. Tigers needed him in there. AJ Hinch went with Andy Ibáñez off the bench, pinch hitter, facing a left-handed pitcher. Andy Ibáñez, as a right-handed hitter, is really, really good against left-handed pitchers. That is his specialty. Andy Ibáñez had been preparing all game for that opportunity. And when the opportunity came up, he knew exactly who he was going to face. He knew exactly what pitches were going to come his way. And he knew exactly what the job was, which was to move the ball forward, put it in play, and get a knock. And that's exactly what he did. And he drove in the game-winning run. But that's not just Andy Ibáñez being prepared. Like, yes, that is one piece of it. That's also AJ Hinch putting him in that situation to be successful. And the way in which he's able to set Andy Ibáñez up for that opportunity is mind-blowing to me. Like that is so incredible, the way that he is able to basically create a lose-lose situation for the opposing manager. Like in the 9th inning, the Tigers had the runner on first base. They had 2 outs. Jake Rogers, a right-hander, was at the plate. AJ Hinch goes with Zach McKinstry, a left-handed hitter, as the pinch hitter against a right-handed reliever in Steven Wilson, which essentially creates back-to-back lefties with Parker Meadows being in the on-deck circle. So that essentially gave the White Sox and Pedro Grifol a situation. It was, okay, are you going to use your right-handed reliever to pitch to Zach McKinstry, left-hander, or are you going to bring in a lefty to face Zach McKinstry? Well, the White Sox decided to stick with Wilson, their right-handed reliever, despite an unfavorable matchup against McKinstry. Now, the White Sox, they might have benefited from bringing in a lefty reliever to face McKinstry, but if they would have brought in a lefty reliever to face McKinstry, then Hinch would have just used his Ibáñez card. Instead, McKinstry walks on 6 pitches. Then the White Sox call their left-hander out of the bullpen. That's when Hinch plays the Ibáñez card, and there's the game. It's just so impressive how he sets that up to be able to give himself 2 opportunities to use Andy Ibáñez. And it's like pick your poison. It's a lose-lose situation. And yeah, Pedro Grifol had no answer because AJ Hinch put him in a checkmate type situation.
It's the small little subtle things. It's sending Holton back out to start the 9th against Benintendi, getting his 4th straight whiff, then bringing in Foley to face the last 2 hitters. I want to know on the bingo card who had Zach McKinstry starting and leading off at third base and who had Andy Ibáñez leading off and playing third base on opening day. So, you know, the answer of what you and I have discussed all spring is that AJ Hinch is trying to play all these games from the 6th inning on. That he's trying to push everything in the game to the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th inning. He wants to create matchups. He wants to create, you know, different advantages of leverage, both with who he's going to throw and who he's going to pinch hit. It's why a lot of guys start games, because he's holding back guys for the end of games. He likes Gio Urshela sometimes to play the end of the game for his defense. Also hoping to see a left-handed bat. A lot of people are wondering what he's doing. And all I can say to all you guys is I promise you, there is not a trick that AJ Hinch isn't planning out well ahead of all of us. So it was quite masterful. He's going to come up against a lot deeper teams and a lot smarter managers, but it was quite amazing what he did this weekend, creating advantages for his team.
Mark, you mentioned him, batting Andy Ibáñez leadoff and having him play third base on opening day. I thought that was really fascinating. And the reasoning behind that was Riley Green in the lineup gets targeted a ton. Teams like to make their decisions a lot based off Riley Green. You would argue that he's probably the best hitter in the Tigers lineup. A guy that can hit both righties and lefties is going to be in there all the time. So the Tigers are facing Garrett Crochet, who was outstanding on opening day. All right. Let's just put that out there. But going into the game, you don't know what to expect. You didn't know if Garrett Crochet was going to be able to pitch deep into the game. Nobody had a clue of what to expect from Crochet. But the thought process was Crochet being a left-handed pitcher, the thought was if they wanted to roll Crochet through and get him to Riley Green, a left-handed hitter, to have the matchup advantage, right? The Crochet versus Green would be advantage Crochet in that situation because it's a left on left. If you wanted to get back to Green either a second time or a third time, Crochet would have to go through Andy Ibáñez, a right-handed hitter who crushes lefties, and Spencer Torkelson, a right-handed hitter who also performs well against lefties. So by putting Andy Ibáñez at the top of the lineup, it guaranteed Andy Ibáñez, essentially, extra at-bats against Garrett Crochet, which I thought was really impressive, right? And to create that separation. And then even the way that he started Zach McKinstry at the bottom of the order in game 2 of that series, to basically have the lefties stacked in the middle of the lineup, but then also to have the lefties stacked in the 1 spot with Parker Meadows and in the 9 spot with Zach McKinstry. So it was basically 2 lefties there, 2 lefties in the middle, and then Cole Keith was also in the mix there with some separation and righties in between him. So you essentially are creating 2 different pockets where you can take advantage of bringing a right-handed hitter off the bench to pinch hit for one of those lefties because you have them back-to-back. You force the opposing manager to make a choice, and then you can try to exploit it. It's just so fascinating how he's been able to maneuver this. And it's how the roster is built, don't get me wrong, but these guys are really prepared for it. Even talking to Parker Meadows, who, let's not forget, Parker Meadows had a chance to step to the plate and get the job done, but AJ Hinch pinch hit Andy Ibáñez for him instead, and Andy Ibáñez got the game-winning single. Parker Meadows said he wasn't surprised at all. He knew it was coming. Andy rakes against lefties and got him a win. No complaints whatsoever. So guys have bought in.
Well, there's an old baseball adage, and people sometimes overemphasize it. They sometimes use the word chemistry. I think the modern day version of chemistry is culture. And what AJ Hinch is starting right off the bat, day one, is creating a culture of how this team's going to play all year, or he hopes they will play all year, assuming they stay healthy. And everybody's got to be ready. Everybody's going to contribute. Everybody's got a job to do. And it was damn interesting to watch him pull the levers. Looked like the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain. He looked like Geppetto in Pinocchio. And, thank goodness we were playing the Chicago White Sox because it all worked pretty damn well. All right, so let's get to question number 2 of the big 2, which is what exactly, if anything, did we learn? Or is it too damn early for us to learn anything? So tell me your thoughts about that.
Well, I think we learned the White Sox are a really bad team. There was a couple of times throughout the series where I just kind of sat back and I said, man, this is a bad baseball team. This is going to be a team that struggles. And I thought the White Sox actually played pretty well, all things considered. But again, you just really think about, the type of fight that they had to put up just to stay in those games. It was kind of shocking to me. So I think, we've learned the White Sox are not going to be a tough team to beat this season. Again, though, I do think they play well. They got some big home runs from Luis Robert. They got a really good pitching performance right out of the gate from Garrett Crochet. Thought Michael Kopech was really impressive out of the bullpen. I mean, he's nasty.
That looked nasty out of the bullpen, dude.
You did, for real. So they got some pieces is what I'm saying. But at the same time, when you look at the sum of the parts and everything all put together, it's
not good. I thought Davy Garcia looked pretty good out of the bullpen too, by the way. The White Sox are bad. And, I think that we need to keep that aspect of things in perspective. Okay. The other thing I think we learned is to AJ Hinch, the bullpen is everything. So he was very, very good. The bullpen was outstanding through 12.2 innings, allowed 1 run, only 4 walks, 3 of them from 1 reliever. The bullpen is going to be responsible for wherever the Tigers go, the bullpen's going to take them.
So, Mark, where do you sit on this then? I mean, obviously the White Sox are bad. We've made that determination. We learned that in the first 3 games of the season. Like I said, I thought they played solid enough to at least stay in the game, but I don't know. Are you concerned that the Tigers only won all 3 of these games by 1 run? I mean, they were all 1-run games. Those could have easily been flip-flopped if not for A.J. Hinch being as good as he is as a manager.
Don't care. Win's a win. Let's move on. That's kind of my theory about it. I never, look at victories that are reasonably cleanly played. I don't look into it too much. It was like, you and I talked a little bit. I talked to some other people. I even brought up how poorly some of their primary hitters were swinging at the same time. It's 48 degrees. Guys are falling 98, and it's game 3. So I think we need to keep some level of perspective, and we'll see what happens. We're going to New York. You're going to play 4 more games. The weather's still not going to be great, but, wins in 48 degrees on day 2 of the season count just as much as wins in September when it's 76 degrees and you need them bad. So, just win, shut up.
Well, that's going to be the big test, Mark, isn't it? I mean, that's what it's going to come down to is is this team going to be able to get to that point? I think that's the big question. You do see 3 games coming up against the Mets, and then you're back home in Detroit for the first time on April 5th for the home opener. Then you're in Pittsburgh. Then you're in Detroit. Then Minnesota. There's a lot of cold weather games. I think we've seen that this team can grit them out and they can win these tough games.
Yeah.
I think that's a really positive sign, considering the fact that there's not going to be a warm weather game until April 22nd when the Tigers are playing at Tropicana Field.
Yeah. So I do want to drop in something. I want to get your feedback on how you thought people swung the bat. There are 3 of their primary left-hand bats, Meadows, Green, and Keith, plus Torkelson. We're 5 for 46, I think, for the weekend. Riley did hit a pretty big homer. Parker walked a few times, stole a base or 2, played some really good defense. Cole Keith worked the count pretty well, but really didn't hit, he didn't barrel up anything. They were, in a word, really bad. Yet you won 3 games. So you got any thoughts on what you saw from their swings or any concern there, or just survive, move on, we're going to New York?
Yeah, survive, move on, going to New York. That's kind of the thought process. I think, a lot of those guys had pretty good at-bats. Not Torkelson, maybe not Green as much, but I think Meadows and Cole Keith both worked pretty good at-bats across the board. And so I think you kind of take that and build off of it, but it's 3 games. It's so early. So yeah, there's no concerns whatsoever when it comes to these guys. And, these are all guys that are going to produce. There's going to be ups and downs throughout the season. That's something that, Scott Harris talked about quite a bit preparing for, was trying to build a pitching staff that's able to support young hitters who are developing and are going to go through some of those ups and downs. So we're going to see that at times. I think it's really encouraging to know that the pitching staff, specifically, both really the rotation and the bullpen, they were able to step up and keep the games close and ultimately, give the Tigers an opportunity to win. And they did. They won all 3.
A couple of kudos. One, Kiribon's Carpenter. Woo, man. That was good looking weekend. This new take the ball away and just pummel it to left field with authority. Got to love that swing approach that he's implemented for this year. And because we do know what happens when he starts getting a few balls over the plate or on the inner half, because he's never had a problem pulling the baseball. Mark Canha, after a spring that did not look too impressive, had a lot of good swings this weekend. And of course, Andy Ibáñez, just being Andy Ibáñez, all 3 of those guys took some lunch money.
Yeah, Andy Ibáñez murders lefties. So if you're a left-handed pitcher, especially if you're a left-handed reliever, you do not want to see Andy Ibáñez, because that guy's going to be ready. And you know what I love about Andy Ibáñez too is the preparation. This is a guy who, when the lefty was coming in Sunday's game, he was out there ready to go, warming up, practicing the swings. It wasn't like he was jumping in the batter's box out of nowhere, right? This guy is always prepared. Even if he thinks there's a potential chance that a lefty could come in, he's already starting his prep work for that potential at bat. even if he doesn't know if he's going to get it or not. So I love the way he prepares. I love the way he goes about his business. He's a class act. He's a good piece for this team. He's a really good piece for this team. So, yeah, if you're a lefty reliever out there, you do not want to run into Andy Ibáñez because he's confident as all can be in those situations.
All right, we got a bunch more stuff to talk about. We're going to take a break, and then we'll come back to it. So we started the season with not a 10 quality Tarik Skubal start, but for sure it was an 8.5. And, just the maturity and variance and the capacity to change game plan on the fly was pretty damn impressive. He just kept, pounding people inside, pounding them. Eventually did throw some change-ups away, but I was curious for some of your feedback on what you saw and how he navigated the start. It was obviously damn effective, but it took a lot of, it was pretty cerebral. I'll use that word.
Yeah, I would say pretty gutsy performance the way that he went out there and shoved. I mean, that's cold weather coming up from Florida. That's not easy to do. He didn't have his best secondary pitches from the onset of the start, but that didn't matter because he adjusted to the situation. He bullied the White Sox with overpowering fastballs in the early innings, and he was able to dial in his changeup in the later innings. And by the end, it seemed like he had everything working, and he was dominant Tarik Skubal. When he has that fastball changeup mix going, he's basically unhittable. Like it's almost impossible to get to him. So yeah, I thought he was really sharp. I like the way that he was able to adapt to the situation. I also like how he was able to handle the moment. He called it a full circle type moment for him because we have to remember that he made his first opening day start in the same ballpark where he made his MLB debut in mid-August 2020. Now, back in 2020, no fans were allowed in the ballpark. So he made his MLB debut without his family, without his friends there. It was, the quiet, empty ballpark that was like the weirdest thing ever, right? Everyone just had to watch on TV. But now he got a chance to make his first opening day start in front of all of his family, all of his friends. He had tons of people flying in from different parts of the country. And he talked about being able to go back to guaranteed rate field and start on opening day. That kind of made up for not having the fans in the stands for his MLB debut. And so he did feel the nerves. He felt the nerves getting to the ballpark. He felt the nerves taking the mound, there in the first inning. But after the first couple of pitches, he was able to settle in. And then, like I said, he might not have had that feel for the changeup early, but he bullied with the fastball until he was able to get the feel of the changeup. And then once that happened, it's pretty much game over.
Yeah, I think we're kind of spoiled. He had 21 whiffs in a game. There's a handful of people who are capable of getting 21 whiffs in 6 innings in the major leagues. And he did it his first time out, and we're sort of intimating it wasn't his best stuff. So not too many guys can get it with their best stuff.
That's scary. That's scary.
So, yeah, it's hard not to enjoy Tarik Skubal. And by the way, if you didn't read Evan's piece on Tarik Skubal, it was quite great. Talked about his family life, talked about what a big influence his wife has been, people he works out with, who taught him the changeup, which I thought was very, very interesting, who taught him the changeup, at least the grip. So you haven't read it yet, buy yourself a very, very inexpensive free press digital subscription, and you get to read everything pretty much for the whole season for almost nothing. So we got deals everywhere. I would suggest you do that. At least you can read Ev every day and get your game recaps and some of the best feature writing available out there in the baseball sphere. So let's talk about the one negative thing of the weekend, which was a pretty tragically sloppy start by Kenta Maeda. Couldn't really locate much of anything. Didn't get nary a swing and miss, which is very unusual for him. And as you have reminded us all springtime, under 90 Kenta Maeda is extremely scary Kenta Maeda. So Kenta Maeda needs to get that velo up over 90 miles an hour if he's going to thrive in the 2024 season. So talk to us a little bit about what he had to say and what you saw.
Yeah, the velo's been concerning for me going back to spring training. I thought over time it would build up and he would get to a point where he was throwing, 90, 91, 92 pretty consistently, because that was something that Scott Harris had mentioned after the Tigers signed Kenta Maeda. That was one of the reasons why they were encouraged by what he showed last year towards the end of the season, because the velocity had ticked up even more. He averaged 91 last year, but he was even higher than that towards the end of the season. And now he hasn't been able to get to that. And I understand there's the build-up process in spring training. I understand that it's cold weather, all that kind of stuff. I get it. But at the same time, sorry, but 87, 88, 89, that's just not going to do it, especially if you don't have a feel for the secondary pitches. And that was his issue. It wasn't just the velo. It was the fact that it was, no velo combined with the fact that he didn't have a feel for the slider or the splitter. Obviously, he throws a couple different variations of both. But when you don't have the split that dives below the zone and you don't have the split that is able to sit at that bottom rail, if you don't have that pitch and you're basically throwing 88-mile-an-hour fastballs and you don't have your slider, you're kind of toast. And Luis Robert made that very apparent with the 2 home runs that he hit off of him. I mean, they were just absolute bombs. And so, yeah, it was a really rough go for Kenta Maeda, but I will say you give up 6 runs in 3 1/3 inning, and the bullpen is able to pick you up the way that they did. I thought that was really impressive. Bullpen was lights out. Even with the Alex Lange mishap, the Tigers did a lot of good things coming out of the pen. They were able to keep the game close, which ultimately allowed the Tigers to chip back in the game on offense. But yeah, really rough go from Kenta Maeda. He didn't have anything working.
The slider was also really, really poor. They were just spinning in the middle of the plate and just had no depth. They didn't change the plane. Guys got, great swings off his slider, which was frightening between you and I. As far as Alex Lange goes, we've talked about this quite a few times. If Alex Lange is not going to throw first pitch strikes and is going to have zero fastball command, you and I had a long talk about this while you were driving back today. And, my attitude is they aren't going to be real patient for waiting for him to throw strikes. It's not a science experiment this year. It's not a team that's going to finish 8 or 10 games under 500. This is a team that's built to win and they expect to win. So you're not going to carry a guy that's a work in progress. I mean, I can understand being inconsistent, but that's a lot different than wondering if a guy's going to throw strikes every time he goes out there. So if I was Alex Lange, I'd start throwing some strikes here pretty quickly. It's not a problem that's just cropped up this year. He had a 15% walk rate in 2023. And I would say Bo Brisky will be up here pretty quickly, and Alex Lange will be working out his problems in Toledo pretty quickly unless he starts throwing some strikes more consistently.
Yeah, that's going to be the big thing to watch moving forward, especially with the bullpen, because there are so many great pieces down there. When you look up and down and you see Jason Foley, when you see Shelby Miller, when you see Andrew Chafin and Tyler Holton and Will Vest with some huge outs over the weekend getting the job done. I thought that was really impressive. They have different guys in the bullpen who are going to be able to get outs. And so if you're going to be walking guys and you're not going to be able to be inside the strike zone, there really is no place for you in that bullpen, right? It's just not worth it. It's just not worth it to load the bases and have to call somebody else in to clean up the mess. Why do that over and over and over again? And the thing is you're right. It's not just an inconsistency. This is not just it's trending in this direction. No, this is what Alex Lange has been since June of last season. It's been quite some time now. He had all the offseason to try to work out some kinks. He had all of spring training to just throw pitches in the zone. Go back and look at what he did in spring training and look at how many pitches now were strikes, how many were in the actual strike zone, how many were in the box, his in-zone rate, not just his strike rate, because that accounts for guys chasing pitches outside of the zone. That counts for foul balls. That counts for balls in play. Go look at the in-zone rate, just what's in the box. It's not good. It wasn't good in spring training. It wasn't good last season, and it's not good to start this season. So that's a problem, right? That's what it ultimately comes down to. Is it's not just all about the swing and miss, because we know we can get swing and miss.
Hey, the curveball it's something special.
It is.
So, but if you have zero fastball command, it's very difficult to survive very long in the major leagues. And
well, if you have zero curveball command either, Mark, you got to be able to command the curveball where you want as well. And the changeup that he has too. Like, you got to command all your pitches and you got to be able to get him in the zone. That's the problem. If you can't land anything, you're toast.
I couldn't, like I said, I think Alex Lange's going to have to show something. I'm sure he's going to get an outing or two coming up here in New York, and he's going to need to throw strikes. Look, Alex Lange can be great. We've seen great Alex Lange, and we need to see great Alex Lange, but they're not going to tolerate an Alex Lange that's a wild card every time he walks out there for throwing strikes. He's obviously not the closer anymore, and if you're going to pitch leverage relief, you need to be able to be counted upon to throw the ball over the plate. So I do want to talk a little bit about the outing today from Jack Flaherty, which was quite interesting. First inning, he threw one fastball strike and 7 fastballs. Second inning, he threw quite a few fastball strikes. The problem was that they were right down the middle. And I want to tip my hat to Jakey Rogers because he quickly figured out that the fastball was not really going to work. And they threw 12 fastballs between the third, in the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth inning, they threw 12 four-seam fastballs altogether and went almost exclusively to the slider and the knuckle curve, which ended up, being very good. And Flaherty's outing quickly improved from kind of a little bit scary the first 2 innings to being a really solid outing. I mean, struck out 7, got 6 innings out of him, was, pretty damn good.
I was really impressed because he was able to adjust to the situation. Like that really stood out to me. Jack Flaherty dominated all spring with the fastball and the slider mix. And so you kind of wondered, hey, what happens if he doesn't have one of those pitches, right? What happens if one of those pitches aren't up to where they need to be? Is he going to be able to compete his way through a game, or is he just going to falter? And I think we learned that he is going to be able to compete even if he doesn't have his best up, even if he doesn't have that optimal fastball slider mix working his way. Too many fastballs over the hard plate? Yeah. And you know what? There was a first pitch fastball to Corey Lee that he blasted for a solo home run in the third inning, right? Like that was not a great offering. But switching to the slider heavy approach to get back on track, I thought was really impressive. That tells me that Jack Flaherty is going to be a guy that can get in compete mode and he can go battle, even if he doesn't have it all together. Slider generated 9 of his 13 swings and misses, 7 of his 16 called strikes. He did a great job of painting it on the bottom rail. That was really impressive to me too. So yeah, I mean, a lot of credit goes to Jake Rogers, but also a lot of credit to Jack Flaherty being able to go to what works and then stick with it and not shy away from it. Because sometimes, guys can get worried about doing the same thing too many times over and over again. You talk about doubling up certain pitches, that can become dangerous at times. But if it's working and that's what you have working, you got to go with it. Like there's no reason to shy away. I think Jack Flaherty did a great job of doing that. And you know what? We see the results in the numbers. He had great numbers, and hopefully he can do it again next time out.
Yeah, well, like I said, pretty underrated great day from Jake Rogers behind the plate. Hit a dong, threw the ball great, and navigated his pitcher away from things that weren't very good, changed up the mix on the fly, and got a really, really good outing out of him.
How big of a strength could the catcher group be this year? I mean, you talk about Jake Rogers hitting a home run. Carson Kelly got the job done too. You go back and you look at what he did in Saturday's game, 2 big hits. He had the game-tying single and also the game-winning single, driving in both of those runs. So I really like what they had. AJ Hinch is calling them a true catching tandem. And I believe it because I do think that there is a world in which Carson Kelly maybe gets more playing time than Jake Rogers. Also, maybe a world in which Jake Rogers get more playing time than Carson Kelly. I think it could really go one of two ways in terms of who grabs the lion's share of the workload. But so far, it's been a pretty even mix, pretty even split from what they've been talking about behind the scenes and also what we've seen on the field, too.
Yeah. Carson Kelly swung the bat really well Saturday. Didn't love a few of his pitch calls. Didn't exactly help Maeda a few times with what he called in certain at-bats when it would have been wiser to walk somebody than to challenge him. But I'm sure as the season wears on, people will get on a better wavelength about that stuff. was good to see him swing the bat so well, though. The other thing we can touch on, the city of Detroit up in arms about one Javier Baez at bats opening day, got a base hit, scored the only run of the baseball game. I think we should take that as a victory, right?
I mean, not only that, Mark, but he got a hit, stole a bag, moved up to third base on a ball in play to the right side of the field, and then scored on a sacrifice fly. He did all the little things too along the way to get there, which I thought was impressive. And he, basically taunted the White Sox fans as they taunted him, and he played that whole game all series long, which is kind of getting a little bit old. I like him playing villain. It's fun, but at the same time, if you're not really producing at a consistent rate, it just kind of becomes a little bit of a lame, boring game, like the boos, and then Javi doing something back to them, and then more boos. It's if you're not going to go yard, if you're not hitting doubles, if you're not making spectacular plays in the field, which he made all the routine plays, give him credit for that. But yeah, that game just kind of got old to me. But it was fun in the first game, I'll tell you that much. And yeah, he did get the job done. That was impressive. But aside from that, not a lot of good.
Well, I mean, got a hit, then 9 at-bats of terribleness, and then finished up the day. Smoked one to the left for his last swing of the day. So 3 games, got a hit in 2 of them, played solid defense, got 3 victories. Let's get on the plane, go to New York, where he had a pretty interesting half a year, and let's see what he can do at Citi Field, a place where, he called home for the 2021 season, and be interested to see how this entire thing progresses. Yes, his at-bats look aggravating, frustrating, but he only has to get one good swing a game and play defense. That's how I feel about it.
He does need to play defense, and that's the big thing that's going to keep him in the lineup. Is you do look at Javier Baez and you say, okay, what if he continues to struggle? What if we're a month into the season and Javi Baez is hitting 180, right? What if he's hitting 220? I mean, who knows where that really lines up at, but we'll know what's good and what's not good. And if he's not performing well a month into the season, at what point does he become a guy who just bats against left-handed pitchers? And does that mean that Zach McKinstry takes over a bulk of the playing time against right-handed pitchers? I don't see that being a real possibility. I don't see Zach McKinstry getting everyday type at-bats. In that case, I think Ryan Kreidler would have to be raking in Toledo to be a real option for them if they wanted to move Javi and make him more of a, only against left-handed pitchers kind of hitter in their lineup. Things would have to be going really bad. But also, if the defense is good enough, I think that continues to create runway for him to be in the everyday lineup. He might be the 9th hitter, he might be the 8th hitter. But if the defense is excellent, if the defense is off the charts, and I'm not just talking about the excellent plays, I'm talking about the routine plays as well. If the throwing continues to remain good, which is a product of some changes that he's made to his footwork, as long as the throwing is good on the routine plays, we know he's going to make the spectacular plays. He fits for me as a 8-9 guy in the batting order, even if the bat never comes around. It'd have to get really bad before the Tigers ended up looking in a different direction, but maybe he does at some point this year become a guy who only bats against left-handed pitchers. We'll see how it all plays out. I think it's a possibility.
All right. I mean, for me, it's a little too early for us to be thinking about if he's going to platoon. We're 3 games into the season. I'm not even going to worry about it yet. Just hope that, if he can get a hit once a game, good swing once a game even, I'm fine with it. I'm not even going to entertain the idea of worrying about if he's going to platoon against left-handers or what's going to happen. Just like I said, one good swing a game, and we'll see where it takes us. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about what comes next. All right, tomorrow, Evan Petzold's going to spend the next 4 days in the Big Apple. Good chance he, could be discovered by one of the modeling agencies there, get himself a little side money. But if that does not happen, he's got to cover baseball games every night. We're going to start tomorrow with Reese Olson on the mound against a New York Met team that got swept their first weekend of the series. Tell me what you're expecting at Citi Field the next 4 days.
Yeah, for everybody who's listening to this podcast, not tomorrow, but today for you listeners. Yeah, it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday for the Tigers against the New York Mets. It'll be nice to see Reese Olson take the mound. It's kind of interesting. You see Reese Olson and Casey Mize hanging out in Chicago, knowing that they're not even going to start until they get to New York. It's kind of like they're waiting on their own personal opening days, if you will, right? I mean, I'm sure the nerves are kind of getting to them at this point, especially for Casey, knowing that he's making a comeback and he has not pitched in the big league since 2022. It's going to be awesome to see him, get back on the mound. I'm hoping that he has success in his first time out, of course, and we'll see what happens. This is the Mets team that seems pretty dysfunctional. I'm not really sure if they're, going to provide much of a challenge. Like, sure, they do have some big bats. Yes, Tigers are going to face a couple lefties, but at the same time, this is a team that I feel like if the Tigers are playing their brand of baseball, if they're playing clean, if AJ Hinch is doing his thing, managing the chess match right, we talked about playing that game, if he's winning those matchups that he's creating for himself, and if the pitching holds up, I think the Tigers have a really good chance to take 2 of 3 in this series, maybe even more. And that sets them up for a really good start to the season, Mark. We talked about the cold weather and not, getting into the warm weather until April 22nd. But how about like the way the Tigers start the season with, the White Sox and then the struggling New York Mets, the Oakland Athletics after that, then the Pittsburgh Pirates. I mean, this is a real opportunity for the Tigers to get off to a fast start. That hasn't happened in the 3 seasons under manager AJ Hinch. It seems like the Tigers are on the way to getting off to a fast start this season. I call 3-0 a fast start. I think they can build upon it even more and get off to a strong start and put themselves, right up front in the AL Central race. Like, how nice would that be to be in the mix, midway through April, feeling really good about yourselves going into May? That's where the Tigers have an opportunity to be, but they got to take care of business in these games. They are very, very winnable games for them, and they got to get the job done, and that starts with New York.
Yeah, well, a 78-win team takes nothing for granted, so let's not even think about it that way. And last time I looked, Pete Alonso, Francisco Lindor, Brandon Nimmo, all pretty good players.
Why can't we look at it that way?
Well, my point is, I just think you take it a game at a time. It's too early to know what you have. Like I said, the heart of your left-hand hitters plus Torkelson just went, 5 for 46. It's not like we're jumping up and down that we're actually swinging the bat so well. Just go take a series at a time, and you start over all the time. You got to play the game as it gets presented every day, and you hope you pitch well. Tigers, the one thing they seem to be able to lean upon so far is pitching well, aside from Kenta, Maeda. So do that, and they've found a way to score enough to have more than the other team by the end of the game. 2 of the games were not pretty, but they still came out with the W.
Mark, I don't care who you are, whether you're a player, whether you're a fan. I mean, I know AJ Hinch preaches the day at a time, take a game at a time, try to take a series at a time. But you can't tell me that you're not looking at this schedule thinking that this is a really big opportunity for the Tigers. Like, if you're missing that, you're not. Like, you got to look at it in a little bit of a broader picture. I understand you want to go one game at a time, but we only talk to people once a week, man. I mean, this is going to be Oakland series is going to be done by the time we hop on here again and do this. This is a big week for the Tigers with the real opportunity, is it not? Come on now.
It's definitely an opportunity. I mean, you jumped out of the gate 3, but I'm just not, it's too early for me to start thinking we're going to go in and bully people. I just want to go in and make sure they play good baseball. And if they pitch well, they got a good shot to win. I mean, what they have shown.
I think they will do both of those things.
What I do like so far is they have shown that they're in a corner and they need to fight their way out, or they need to find a way to scratch a run, or they need to figure out a way how to get a double play to get themselves out of an inning, maybe where they've already given up 2 and they don't want to give up 4 or 5. They've figured that part of the game out. And that's a subtle, underrated thing that winning teams figure out how to do. You want to be in a slugfest? They'll play that way. You want to be in a low-scoring game? They'll be in that type of game. You need to make a play on defense to keep the game close or to get yourself out of an inning. They've done that too. So all those things I like. That's how winning teams win. At this point, though, they're 3-0, And, I need to see a few more series before I'm going to start being arrogant about how good they are. I just need to see more.
No, I'm not trying to get arrogant that they're all that in a bag of chips, right? Like they're going to go out there and they're going to run the table in the Central. There's no doubt about it. Like I still have the Twins beating them. I just think that you have to remember what they did last year. I know last year you say, oh, that's last year and it doesn't matter anymore. But I do think when you talk about the chemistry, when you talk about the culture that's been created, that was there last season too. And what they do in the second half, the Tigers were 39-34 in the second half of last season. They had a winning record down the stretch too. I mean, they played really good baseball, and that has carried over to this season. That's why I'm a little bit more optimistic, especially after seeing them come out of the gate and do exactly what they said they would do. They said that they would pitch well while the young hitters went through their development stages, and that there's going to be ups and downs throughout the season, but they did a good job of pitching well outside of Kenta, Maeda, and Alex Lange. And that really stands out to me. And I think it's the culture, the chemistry that we saw towards the end of the season last year has certainly carried over. The fact that the matchup game that AJ Hinch is playing, it's the same as it was last year. Guys are just more comfortable with it. Like there's a lot of carryovers between what we saw last year and what we're seeing now this year. That has me encouraged. That has me looking at Oakland and saying that's a team the Tigers can beat. That has me looking at the Pirates and saying those are two games the Tigers should take. That's how I feel about it.
Well, Tigers finished 19-10 last year. They won their first three, so now they're 22-10 in their last 32, if you want to look at it that way. As far as the Pirates are, concerned, Pirates are pretty good this year. Kind of interesting. So I'm not going to take the Pirates for granted, but and God knows we've played just horrendously against the Oakland A's for about 8 years. So as appetizing as that series seems to be on paper, somehow, some way, the A's play their best and the Tigers play their worst when those two teams face off. So I'm not writing down the big W for any of these games. Yeah, I'm interested to see against the Mets, especially if they win the Monday game. It'll be really ugly in New York on Tuesday. Can you imagine the Mets being 0-4, the Tigers 4-0, and how much yelling there's going to be before that game if that happens?
Yeah, the tabloids are going to be going crazy if that ends up going down, but we'll see. No, look, I do think though when you do look at the lineup, as a whole, and you look at what the Tigers have, I think like you have to be a little bit concerned about the offense. I do like the pitching, we like the bullpen, but to your point, like this is going to be that. Like I mentioned it several times now, that development period for the young hitters, for guys like Cole Keith, Spencer Torkelson, another year. I mean, pitchers are going to attack him differently. They got the scouting report on him. He's going to be attacked differently. He's going to have to make that adjustment. It's always that cat and mouse game in the big leagues where, the scouting report and the way that teams attack you, it's going to be one way. You're going to have to adjust. Once you adjust, they're going to attack you a new way. They try to exploit every weakness you have until you cover up some of those holes. And so I do think that there is an element of a lot of these guys making adjustments along the way. That's the biggest concern for me. And that's where guys like I think Mark Canha could be really big as a steady presence in their lineup. We already saw a little taste of that. But yeah, for a lot of these guys, like there are going to be a maturation in a growing period. Kerry Carpenter is the same way. Like I don't expect Kerry Carpenter to rake every single series. Riley Green is going to go through his ups and downs. And Cole Keith, like I mentioned as well. So, and Parker Meadows, of course. So I think there is going to be some of that up and down with the offense, which is where a little bit of my concern comes in. But ultimately, I like the way that they're approaching things. I like the way Michael Brodar and Keith Beauregard are teaching the hitters in terms of, being able to really look for what pitches they can hunt in specific situations, in specific areas of the strike zone. It's sticking to that plan, sticking to that process, and trying to go at it. But at the same time, those pitches are nasty on the other side too. So it can be tough.
All right. So Friday is a day that is always a national holiday in the state of Michigan. It's opening day against the Oakland A's. So give me some thoughts about the 2024 season opening down at Comerica Park. You got a new scoreboard. You probably are going to have a sellout. Hopefully you have a team that has, 5 or 6 wins under their belt in an early jumping out of the gate real quick kind of thing. What kind of atmosphere you think will be down there Friday if you got 5 or 6 wins and you're walking in opening day, 5-1, 6-0? Yeah,
sellout no matter what. I don't care how many wins the Tigers had on the board. That is That is one of the games that is going to sell out, no doubt. But I'm interested, honestly, to see more of what the reaction is like on Saturday and Sunday. And that's where I think if the Tigers have, if they've got 5 wins, if they've got 6 wins, I think we see a big turnout for Saturday and Sunday games. I think in the past we've seen opening day have a really big turnout, and then you see the trickle down effects of some fans falling off, and then it ultimately comes down to your normal games. There's not a ton of people there, right? And we've seen that year in, year out recently, especially because the Tigers have struggled early in the season, and that's why I think it's a big deal that they played good ball in the first 3 games and they won all 3, even though they were close games. That's going to keep people coming to the ballpark. It's going to keep the butts in the seats. And ultimately, you don't feel like you're trying to dig yourself out of a hole by the time you get to the second week of April, which is where the Tigers have been for the past 3 years. It's feeling like they've had to dig themselves back out of that hole. So if they can, they can do something against the Mets in New York and they can take that momentum, bringing it back to Comerica Park against the Athletics, sky is the limit. That is a real opportunity, I think. And I mentioned that a couple of times now. And I think we're going to see it with the fan base coming out. We'll see, though.
I'll be excited to see what kind of weather we get. I've seen a few different projections on what the weather's supposed to be Friday. I've seen something.
Should be nice, right?
I've heard it could be nice. It could be 50 and cloudy. I hear that Saturday and Sunday should be pretty nice. So hopefully it'll bleed into Friday and everybody will have a great time, because having opening day on a Friday is actually a pretty great thing for the city of Detroit. A lot of good stuff going on. Just, had a lot of basketball downtown this week. Got opening day next week. All good things. Got the draft coming up down there. So a lot of good things. I want to close. So I always try to do some fun things. The Tigers have a new celebration after you hit a homer this year. You want to talk a little bit about that, its origins, and what your thoughts are about it.
Yeah, so brand new home run celebration for a new season, I guess. It's the Pizza Spear. It's a Little Caesars themed celebration, which replaces the Detroit Red Wings themed hockey celebration from last season, which I really liked the hockey celebration. I thought that was cool, with guys throwing on the helmet, throwing on the gloves, grabbing the stick, and then, shooting the hockey puck into the mini net. Or sometimes it was even like a crumpled up paper cup that they would, shoot in and take a wrist shot, or sometimes a slap shot, depending on the aggression. I really liked that prop. I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought it did a good job of paying respect to Hockeytown and the Detroit Red Wings, another team owned by the Ilitch family and Christopher Ilitch. But yeah, obviously the new home run celebration, it's basically a plastic spear with 3 pizzas stabbed on there. So basically what happens is if a guy hits a home run, Spencer Torkelson is there waiting, holding the spear for you, and then you get to grab the spear and you can walk into the dugout and slam it into the ground. Sadly, there were 3 pieces of pizza on there, right? They're all fake pizzas, but Mark Canha had slammed the spear into the ground, and then one of the pizzas fell off or whatever. And then by the end of it, the top 2 pizzas kind of look soggy and weird. So I don't know. They're going to have some work to do maybe to try to keep the pizzas in shape, if you will, on the spear. But yeah, interesting celebration. Obviously, it's free advertising for Little Caesars, which is owned by Ilitch Holdings. Christopher Ilitch is the president and CEO of the company. He's also the owner of the Tigers. He, by the way, attended the first 2 games in Chicago. So it was interesting, though, talking to the guys after the game. Spencer Torkelson, Mark Canha, apparently huge fans of Little Caesars pizza. Mark Canha is a known foodie. He loves food. He likes to go try food in different ports of the country. Loves it in Arizona. Mark's making faces at me. But Mark Canha says, "I love Little Caesars pizza." That's a quote right there. So Mark Canha, Little Caesars fan, Spencer Torkelson, Little Caesars fan, and the Tigers now have a Little Caesars home run themed celebration.
Well, I'm glad they're having fun. Glad they're doing something Ilitch centric. I want to give a shout out to Chris Ilitch for showing his butt up to opening day and sitting in the stands in Chicago. I liked it.
For sure.
Didn't sit up in a box. Didn't hide. Didn't wait for opening day in Detroit. Took his butt to Chicago, sat down in the stands, and showed up. And I don't think any player is upset when they see their owner hanging in the stands for opening day. So, we're going to tip our hat to Chris Ilitch. God knows Mark Gorash has criticized him enough times in the last 7 years. So I'm glad that I get to say some nice things about it. And it was a damn fun first week. Let's be real honest. It's been a long time since we had this much fun watching 3 baseball games against a terrible baseball team. So we're going to take it. Hopefully this week will be equally as much fun. And when we sit down to talk about it next Sunday night, we'll, continue to be having as much fun as we did this week. So, all right, it's time to get out of here. It's time for Evan Petzold to go to bed. So I'd like to remind everybody to rate, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to Days of Roar. Apple, Spotify, pull it out of the free press. Wherever you listen to it, give us a rate, a share, and subscribe. You can say all kinds of nice things about Evan Petzold. You can say all kinds of mean things about Mark Gorash, because we're all used to it. I want you to know that you can find Days of Roar in the Free Press digital edition every day, especially for every Evan Petzold article. I'd like to thank our executive producers, Kirk Crawford and Anjanette Delgado, and the Free Press editor, Nicole Avery Nichols, for having us on every week. To our producer, Robin Chan, who probably will hate us after listening to this recording, but who saves us every damn week and makes us sound so, so good.
Oh, that's good.
Love to my little grandson and lover of Woody from Toy Story, Braden Michael Gorash, who was pretty spectacular when I got a chance to see him recently. And I want to say shout out to Savannah Petzold. There's a rumor that your husband may stay at your apartment for more than one night coming this weekend. So get ready. And until next week, let's hope we can get a bunch more victories this week. I'd like to say to everybody, peace.